While the show Andor is largely about the rebellion, lots of characters all creating that rebellion from Luthen and Mon Mothma to Andor and Brasso and Bix and all those other smaller characters, the show is also primarily about Cassian. From season 1 all the way till now, Cassian has been growing as a character, and in season 1 we saw him grow from someone who was basically just trying to survive, serve himself, to serve his own survivability. He was growing as a character from an individual who didn't believe in much beyond himself to believing in the cause, and when he lost everything, he needed something to fight against. When he went to Luthen in the end of season 1, he had lost pretty much everything he loved and held dear in this world that he didn't really have that much love or affinity for. He tilts a little bit on the nihilistic or pessimistic side of things. He isn't that well liked as a person, save for a few close friends and his mother. So he doesn't join Luthen because he believes in a positive cause. He joins Luthen because he has a necessity to fight against something. But in that urge to fight against something, we see his darker side in the beginning of season 2. We see that Andor does not have a lot of positivity in his life still. While he's believing in the rebellion a lot more, he's believing in the building of the rebellion and the causes of the rebellion, etc., he still does not have a lot of forms of happiness. We don't see scenes of him being happy. We see him being proud and enjoying being a rebel and making a change against the Empire. He likes what he's doing, but we don't see him having a kind of happiness or a kind of normalcy. So the growth of Andor from season 1 to season 2 is incredibly important because we saw him go from someone who was incredibly unhappy and dissatisfied, just kind of looking out for himself and his few close friends and his mother and stuff like that, to someone who cares about a lot more and has a cause. But up until the 3rd and 4th arc of season 2, he was still fighting with, I would call it, negative energy. He wasn't using positive energy to propel himself forward. The further he gets from Luthen, the more happy he becomes, because Luthen was driven by that darkness as well, that ego, that antagonistic nature, his unwillingness to yield, his excellent monologue. And Cassian was like that at first, but now for Cassian to have happiness, something which we don't see Luthen ever exhibit in the show, Cassian must move away from Luthen, because Luthen gains traction and power when fighting with that darkness in that antagonistic state, antagonistic with himself, with the Empire, sort of with everyone around him. That's his drive. But Cassian doesn't want to be like that. He kind of was for a bit, but now he's not so much, and he's found that happiness, and that's where he gains his motivation, walking within the light, whereas Luthen walks within the darkness. And there was that excellent shot in the end of season 1, and people and many other reactions and comments said he looked like a Sith because he was walking within the darkness, within the dark elements of the Force, and Cassian is now guided by the light side of the Force, and that happiness and that light is what gives him his strength. So he needs to distance himself from Luthen in that way as they split in these final arcs. When Bix first brought him to the Force Healer, he denied it outright, and his disbelief wouldn't allow him to accept that he has a higher purpose. He has a group, he has a belonging, he's part of a clan, and he's part of something bigger. What is incredibly heartbreaking as season 2 progressed is that Andor gained happiness. In this final arc, opens with a scene of him playing cards with Melshi and K2. And they're having fun. They're laughing. He has friends. He has a life. In the previous arc, he had Bix, though he still was running missions, and he's running missions now. He has a purpose. We see him smiling. We see him laughing. Things he didn't really do before, especially in season 1 and not in the beginning of season 2. And this is what kills me, because it is his drive towards happiness that also gives him his renewed vision of himself, his belief in that purpose, his trajectory as a messenger, his belief in the Force in some way, like this Force healer has revealed to him, is ultimately spelling his death. But it is also the thing bringing him happiness. So as a character, he's still very dynamic in season 2, and I love that. The writers did a wonderful job with making his season 2 arc still very dynamic. He's growing and changing from a pessimistic, negative person who is fighting out of negativity, revenge, or the necessity for him to combat something to sort of distract, or that void, that chasm within himself that isn't satisfied. And it isn't until he fills that void and that chasm with friendship and normalcy and love, romance, intimacy, and a life. And the closer he gets to those things, the more he will believe in the cause. The more he will see that it's not being like Luthen and just fighting against something out of ego and anger and injustice. He's fighting for his friends, for Bix, for their future, for his loved ones, and for himself, for his own happiness and normal life that he wishes he could have once this authoritarian empire is removed. And it is ultimately that thing that is leading him to his death. And in my reaction, there's that scene where he's walking out on his final mission leading into Rogue One, and he glances over at the Force healer there, who sees him and nods, and he looks at her, nodding and approving of her message. He believes in her, not because he believes in the superstition, but he believes in himself, and he believes in the happiness, in the positive life that is worth saving. He is now fighting for positivity. And if he was still fighting out of negativity for ego or anger or revenge or self-preservation, like in the beginning of season 1, he was just trying to fight to survive and get by. He wasn't trying to take down the Emperor. When he was on Aldhani and they were saying, you're getting paid for this, he said, of course I am. Who would do this for free? Who would do this voluntarily, going up against these odds for nothing? He's actually just trying to survive back then. Then he's fighting for negativity. Then he's fighting out of negativity. Now he's fighting out of positivity. And if he wasn't fighting out of positivity, he wouldn't believe the Force healer. He wouldn't believe his sense of purpose. He wouldn't believe that he has a calling and he needs to do this. And he might walk away. He might go join Bix in that scene where Vel comes to him and says, maybe you shouldn't wait too long. You should go find Bix. Now he's fighting for purpose, and that purpose is the Force leading him to his death. And it makes me shed tears in that moment, and it's a silent moment, just the music playing. It's inspirational and full of awe, and it's also sad and tragic if you know what's going to happen in Rogue One, because he now is believing in his own demise. And it's heartbreaking for him to have true happiness and fight out of positivity for change in the world. He has to die. And that is the cruelty of the Force to the individual. And lore-wise, the Force is some grand philosophical thing, on a giant scale. And so, of course, it would be willing to sacrifice a person for the greater good. And I know he has the child with Bix. For me, I'm not drawn to that bloodline legacy as much. I know that it's impactful. I know that that's important. I know that it is a symbol of Cassian living on. But I do believe in the life, the human condition and experience of the individual, and he's losing that by the will of the Force. And when Bail Organa sends him, approves of his final mission and sends him off, he says, "May the Force be with you." Oh, it is. The Force is the thing holding that carrot on a stick in front of him, that happiness, leading him on to the edge of a cliff where he's going to die. And that chasm is filled with happiness for now, but I don't know. It's tragic. Breaks my heart even more. And I'm really impressed because in Arc 3 of Season 2, I was really impressed with the writers introducing that Bix lives and went, to somewhere else and went somewhere to wait for Andor, for him to live on, for him to come to her after it's over. And we that know Rogue One knows that's not going to happen. And that was heartbreaking. And that brought me to tears in that moment. And then this just did it again in an even heavier way. Because in the third arc, losing Bix, he was still incredibly sad. And up until that moment, he had positivity in his life, but he was still this mix of positivity and negativity, of fighting out of anger and ego and the need for conflict while trying to keep his positivity contained in a box at home. And then in the final arc, that happiness, that role, that pride, in a good way, in what he's doing and who he is in full-fledged and bloom in his personality and character. And now he's happily marching off. So my hat's off to you again, directors, for 2 arcs in a row, slaying, destroying me. Well done. I love it for the experience that I get watching it, of course. And I love it when shows make you feel and think so much more. So I love it, but it brings tears to my eyes.